Today we are going to be learning about how to make inferences by Mrs. Bishop. Well, what is an inference? An inference is a conclusion a reader comes to based on background knowledge and textual evidence. Let's look at what each of those items are. Background knowledge is anything you already know in your head based on your experiences. Before you open this PowerPoint today, what you already knew is your background knowledge. Textual evidence is proof found in a piece of text. So anything that's a quote or something you can underline directly out of the text is textual evidence. You plug these in together and you get an inference, which again is a conclusion a reader comes to based on background knowledge and textual evidence. Let's read this together, and as we read, we're going to be determining an inference that we can make based on evidence from the text and our background knowledge. "Tommy," Mom called out as she walked in the front door. "Tommy," she continued shouting, "I sure could use some help with these groceries." There was still no reply. Mom walked into the kitchen to put the grocery bags down on the counter when she noticed shattered glass from the picture window all over the living room floor and a baseball not far from there. "I'm going to kill you, Tommy," Mom yelled to herself as she realized that Tommy's shoes were gone. So as we look at this, what inference can we make about Tommy and what happened to that picture window? Tommy broke the picture window with his baseball. Well, what evidence from the text helped you to come up with that inference? Well, there was shattered glass from the picture window all over the floor, in addition to a baseball not far from it. So that is our textual evidence. But what did I already know in my head before I saw this text that helped me to come up with that inference? Well, I've seen TV shows where a kid breaks a window and a baseball is always nearby. So background knowledge that I already knew in my head before the lesson, added to evidence from the text, helped me to make the inference that Tommy broke the picture window with the baseball. Let's try a second one. Anastasia sat by the fountain in the park with her head in her palms. She was weeping mournfully and wearing all black. In between gasps and sobs, Anastasia cried out a name, "Oh, John." And then her cell phone beeped. Her hand ran into her purse and her heart fluttered. The text message was from John. She opened up the message and read the few bare words, "I need to get my jacket back from you." Anastasia threw her head into her arms and continued sobbing. What inference can we make about Anastasia and John? That's it. Anastasia and John broke up. At first you probably thought that John was dead, but we had some evidence to the contrary that just shows that they broke up. One is that she was weeping mournfully, so she was extremely upset. Also, her heart fluttered. When we hear about matters of the heart, it has to do with emotions. Also, the text message from John said, "I need to get my jacket back from you." So Anastasia cried, he needs his jacket back, and her heart fluttered. In addition to the background knowledge, I know that when people ask for their things back, they are typically breaking up. So that background knowledge that I already knew before I started the lesson, in addition to Anastasia crying as textual evidence, odds are they broke up, which is my inference. Let's try a third and final inference using text. Follow along with me. Tony walked out of the shopping mall with his arms full of bags and the sun shining on him. As he approached his car, he started awkwardly feeling around his pockets with his arm full of bags. He did not find what he was looking for, so he transferred the bags on one arm to the other arm, which already had bags. Tony had a lot of bags on one arm. He still couldn't find what he was looking for. Now he dropped the bags and plunged both hands desperately into all of the pockets on his jeans. With a look of despair, Tony ran to his car. He tried to open the door, but it was locked. Then he saw something on the passenger seat out of the car. He stopped looking and pulled his phone out of his pocket. What inference can we make about what happened to Tony in this scenario? Tony locked himself out of his car with his keys inside. Well, what evidence from the text can prove that to us? He plunged both hands desperately into his pockets. You don't do that unless there's a situation occurring. Also, he had a look of despair. The author is really painting that he's desperate for something that's happened. So his hands in his pockets of his jeans and a look of despair is our textual evidence. And I know personally that when people can't find their keys, they look into their pockets while outside their car. So we add that background knowledge to the textual evidence, and we can come up with the inference that Tony obviously locked himself out of his car with his keys inside. So let's continue. Now we're going to look at a series of pictures and determine what inference we can make about these pictures. What inference can we make about the lady in this picture? She is sick. Well, how do you know? She has an ice pack on her head, coffee or something warm in her hand, and she's wrapped in a cover. Well, I know from personal experience when I'm sick, I do the same thing. I might put an ice pack on my head, I might drink something warm, and I might be wrapped in a blanket, and usually when I do that, I'm sick. So background knowledge from experiences in addition to textual evidence shows us the inference. Odds are this lady is sick. Next to last picture here, in what place are the men in the cartoon? The inference we can make is that the men are in jail. Well, how do we know? What clues do we have? There are bars on the windows, and there are numbers on their shirts. Well, I know from TV shows I've seen, people in jail are behind bars, and they have a number on their shirt. So, the background knowledge from TV shows I've seen, in addition to evidence from the picture, helps me to make the inference that the men are in jail. What inference can I make about this third and final picture? That's right, there probably was a wreck. Evidence, the traffic is backed up. Now that's not the only inference we can make, but it is a good inference that we could make. How do I know that backed up traffic equals a wreck? Because I've been in a car when traffic is backed up due to a wreck. I've personally experienced it and seen a similar situation. So a background knowledge and experience I went through in addition to traffic being backed up as evidence from our picture helped me to come up with the inference that there was a wreck. So again, to review, background knowledge is anything you already know in your head based on your experiences. Textual evidence is proof found in a piece of text or a picture, and when we add those together, we get an inference, which is a conclusion a reader comes to based on background knowledge and textual evidence. The whole point of learning how to make an inference, we use it daily in life, but also with the SOLs at the end of the school year, you'll be given a scenario and you'll have to answer it in a multiple choice fashion. So how can this help me answer a multiple choice question on the SOL? Let's practice. Follow along with me as I read. Lance was surprised when his friend told him they were going climbing. Lance's friend said, "I have an extra ice axe, and I have spikes called ice crampons that fit on the bottom of your shoes that you can use." Lance knew that although it was cold and there was snow, there was no place suitable for rock climbing. When Lance's friend told him to meet him in the parking lot by the path up to the waterfall, Lance knew where they were going to climb. So most likely Lance and his friends are going to climb where? The correct answer is B, a frozen waterfall. Remember, with an inference, you have to be able to back it up with the text and personal experience or background knowledge. The proof in the text is ice crampons. Well, if it has ice, we know it's cold, frozen waterfall. How do we know it's a waterfall? Straight out of the text. Let's try two more together. The big concert was tonight. As the students tuned their instruments, Michelle sat quietly in her chair. She had practiced very hard for this night, and She knew she was ready. "I'm so nervous," her friend Cheryl said. "My heart is racing and I don't want to think about everyone watching me." Michelle patted Cheryl on the back and said in a calm voice that everything was going to be fine. Most likely, how did Michelle feel? Now, this is a tricky question because you have two characters. You have to be careful that you're answering the question for the character they're asking about, Michelle. And Michelle was relaxed. Letter C. How do we know? What evidence from the text help us to make that inference? Michelle sat quietly. Well, I know if someone sat quietly, they're not going to be surprised, although they could be A, distressed, C, relaxed, or D, nervous. Let's look at another piece of evidence. Said in a calm voice. Well, if I'm distressed or nervous, or I am not going to be calm. And surprised, we know, is not the answer, because if we're surprised, we're not going to sit quietly. So that's why the best answer is C, relaxed. Let's look at our last one. Long ago, sailors depended on the wind to power their ships. These same sailors came to know a particular part of the Atlantic Ocean as the doldrums. This area was named for its calmness and lack of movement. Sometimes ships sat for weeks waiting for the wind to power them. This area is near the equator. It is where the converging trade winds produce upward winds as they are heated, resulting in absences of steady surface winds. Most likely, if we say that someone is suffering from the doldrums today, we mean that they are what? The correct answer is C, inactive and listless. Again, with an inference, we can't just make it off the top of our head. We have to ground it with the text. What is our evidence from our story? Calmness and lack of movement. So if you are calm, you are inactive and listless. So to review, to make an inference, we must have background knowledge, which is anything we already know before we start the lesson, from experiences that we have been through or things we have seen. In addition to proof found in the text, known as textual evidence, we are able to come up with an inference, which again is a conclusion a reader comes to based on background knowledge and textual evidence. I hope you have learned how to make an inference and ground it in text. Thank you for your time.